Hi, I'm Dr. Scott Lee. Today, let's talk about one of the most confusing atrial fibrillation topics and one I'm asked about constantly in the comment sections on my channel's forum. It's about vagal atrial fibrillation. What is vagal atrial fibrillation? People will tell me things like, my AFib happens mostly at night or after I eat, or it happens when I'm relaxing, not when I'm stressed the way people keep talking about, or it happens when my stomach is bloated or I'm having acid reflux. And then they'll ask, I heard this is something called vagal atrial fibrillation. What is that? Is it different than regular atrial fibrillation? Is it more dangerous? What do I do about it? Please talk about that. So let's clear this up right now. Vagal atrial fibrillation is the same atrial fibrillation as other atrial fibrillation. It's the same rhythm problem, the same electrical chaoticness in the heart walls. The difference is not the atrial fibrillation itself. The difference is the pattern of triggers that tend to set your AFib episodes off because the autonomic nervous system plays a bigger role. And here's the key point that most people are never told. Your triggers that wake up your atrial fibrillation matter the most in early stages of atrial fibrillation, when episodes are still coming and going. That's when recognizing this pattern can help you reduce episodes and potentially slow the AFib progression. Now, most people assume that AFib should happen during stressful times. Your adrenaline surging, you're rushing, you're panicking, you're angry, or you're exercising. And that's true for a lot of people. But vagal atrial fibrillation, the vagal AFib pattern, which is a slightly different triggered type, can feel completely backwards. It tends to happen when you're more in rest mode, like at night or after dinner, when you lay down, when you try to go to sleep, when you're relaxing on the couch, or sometimes after alcohol, especially in the evening. So this gets people confused and they feel helpless, like their AFib is just random and uncontrollable. And when patients feel like it's random, then they just live in fear or they just try to ignore it, but neither is a good plan. So here's the next problem. If no one explains your pattern of AFib or your triggers, you may just get generic advice that doesn't fit you. If somebody has, say, for example, stress-triggered atrial fibrillation, which tends to be a more normal form, the advice may focus on adrenaline triggers. Try to avoid caffeine or anxiety or exertion. But if your AFib tends to be the vagal triggered pattern, your episodes may be tied to things like digestion, sleeping, relaxation physiology. See, if we don't identify your trigger pattern, you may feel like nothing works. But the truth is you might be solving the wrong trigger. Now, I want to say something very clearly and honestly. Atrial fibrillation is unfortunately often a progressive rhythm problem, meaning it gets worse over time. So early on, many people have AFib that comes and goes. And that's the early stage. That's where triggering it, the well-known triggers that wake it up, stand out. But later on, if your AFib progresses more into a later stage where it's persistent atrial fibrillation or long-standing persistent AFib, that's where you're in AFib most of the time, then the specific triggers that wake up the AFib at the earlier stages matter less. Why? Because the heart walls, the atria, have already remodeled. The heart rhythm instability becomes more chronic, more self-sustaining. That's the later stages. And it's no longer waiting for a trigger. It's just there. It's awake all the time or most of the time. So when you get to those stages, it doesn't mean you failed. It just means the underlying disease progress has progressed. And that's exactly why recognizing vagal AFib triggers early, while episodes are still intermittent and you're still at an earlier stage where it makes more of a difference, can be so valuable. Okay, now let's actually explain what vagal AFib is, what causes it, what the common triggers are, and how your gut, stomach, and intestines fits into this, and what you can do about it. So vagal AFib simply means your episodes tend to occur when the parasympathetic nervous system, your rest and digest system, is dominant. Again, I have to say, it's the same AFib. This label of vagal AFib just describes the timing and trigger pattern. And it's the most obvious earlier in the disease when your heart's still flipping in and out of the rhythm at the early stages. You see, your autonomic nervous system has two main branches. There's the sympathetic stimulation, the fight or flight response people talk about. That's like when you're standing at a tall building or see a lion. That's the adrenaline surge. The faster heart rate, the higher blood pressure, the more alertness, your pupils dilate. But then the autonomic nervous system also has the second component, the parasympathetic stimulation. This is the rest and digest mode. This is where your brain says, hey, I don't want to rev things up. I want to slow the heart rate down. I want to digest the food I just ate. This is more what we call vagal tone. That's the parasympathetic stimulation. See, both systems affect your electrical behavior of the heart. In some people, adrenaline, the sympathetic stimulation, surges trigger their AFib. In others, the parasympathetic or vagal surges, especially during digestion and sleep, are the ones that tend to trigger their AFib episodes. So it's not that vagal tone or stimulation is, quote, bad. It's that your atria or heart walls are just sensitive to shifts in this autonomic balance different from other people. So if your AFib comes and goes, and you suspect the triggers of your AFib are the parasympathetic or vagal pattern, then common triggers for you might include large meals, especially dinner, lying down soon after eating, occurring at nighttime, or episodes that start in the evening, post-exercise episodes, not necessarily during the episode, like sympathetic stimulated AFib, but after, when the body shifts into recovery mode, alcohol, especially in the evening. Alcohol has direct toxic effects. Bending over after a meal, sometimes cold drinks, feeling bloated or reflux, acid reflux, constipation, or stomach intestine discomfort. Many people describe it like this. They'll say, I'm fine all day, then after dinner when I'm trying to relax, boom, I get my AFib. That pattern is a major clue. Now let's talk about the gut connection, the stomach-intestine connection here, because it's real and it's often ignored. So the vagus nerve, which is where we get the term Vagal AFib from, the vagus nerve is a major communicator highway between the brain and your stomach intestines or your gut, and also your heart. When your GI or gastrointestinal tract is irritated or distended, you get acid reflux, bloating, gas, constipation. This can stimulate that vagus nerve. We call that vagal signaling. That doesn't mean that the stomach magically causes AFib every time, but it can shift your autonomic nervous tone and influence AFib to start because of the electrical stability in a susceptible heart. This is why some people notice AFib after heavy meals, or spicy foods, or acid reflux triggers. Sometimes people get it with large carb loads, constipation and bloating, or certain food intolerances. And again, this tends to be most noticeable when AFib is in the early stages when it's still intermittent. So think about it this way. This is the simplified physiology. High vagal tone can shorten the electrical recovery time in parts of my heart walls and therefore increase the unevenness in how AFib cells reset. When atrial tissue resets unevenly, it becomes easier for these abnormal electrical circuits or sources to form, and that's one way AFib can start. So in the early stages of AFib, the combination of a susceptible atrium, or one that's easily triggered, and these vagal triggers can definitely set off episodes. Now, let's get practical. What are some strategies that can often help people with a vagal pattern or vagal stimulated AFib? Number one, you can try changing your meal size and the timing of when you eat. Try eating smaller dinners or avoiding huge, large, late meals. Give yourself a buffer, maybe 2 to 3 hours between dinner and laying down or going to sleep. Number two, try to reduce common evening triggers, such as alcohol, especially at night, heavy carb loads during dinner that just sits in your stomach for a long time, late night desserts, large fatty meals. All of this can help. Number three, Address any acid reflux or bloating issues. If reflux, bloating, or constipation are frequent, you need to treat them, because reducing these gastrointestinal irritations can actually reduce your AFib stimulation in a lot of people, and it can really help. Number 4, track your patterns. So for example, for 2 weeks, track the time of day that your AFib episodes happen, the relationship with meals and the timing of meals, and the relationship between how large your meals are, your meal sizes. Track whether it occurs with or without alcohol intake, or sleeping in certain positions, or whether they're related or triggered by reflux and bloating symptoms. This turns your, what seems like random AFib, into a recognizable pattern. Number 5, remember, core AFib management still applies. This is not some different kind of AFib. Even if your AFib is a vagal pattern or a vagal stimulated AFib, the fundamentals in treatment still matter, such as stroke risk assessment still matters. Am I treating my rate or trying to control the rhythm or keep myself in normal rhythm treatment still matters. Or am I going to try to treat this with an ablation to get rid of it from the inside? That may still be appropriate depending on your stage of AFib and your level of symptoms. Going after triggers in a vagal AFib pattern helps most in the early stages, but they don't replace the real medical decision-making and the other treatment options. So let me say this again clearly. If your AFib comes and goes, triggers matter a lot. And recognizing those triggers and whether they're vagal triggers is important. But understanding them may reduce episodes and potentially slow progression. But remember, if your AFib becomes a later stage, like persistent or long-standing persistent AFib, where you're in it most of the time, then those triggers are going to matter less, because the rhythm problem has now become self-sustaining. That's why I want people to learn this early, at earlier stages, when they still have leverage and they can still do something about their triggers and it still makes a difference. If your AFib happens at night after meals or when you relax, then you're not imagining it. You have a vagal pattern AFib. It's real, it's a common pattern, and you understanding it does give you back control. If this video helped you, please share it with someone you love, especially someone early in their AFib journey who feels confused about their triggers. And make sure to subscribe to my channel for more science-based education on AFib patterns, triggers, progression, and treatment strategy. And for more AFib resources, or to book a second opinion clarity consult, you can visit drscottlee.com. I'm Dr. Scott Lee. Remember, the more you understand your AFib pattern, the more power you have to calm it. I hope this helps, and thanks for watching. For everything atrial fibrillation related, please feel free to go to my website, drscottlee.com, where you're going to find more resources and also can follow me on social media.